Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. For those of us who joined us for our first three workshops, welcome back and bear with us as we go over some details from everyone who's new here today. I'm Tammy Biraba, a policy consultant and editor on the Africa Center's policy team, along with Tunde Olatunji, the Associate Policy Director at TAC. With the sponsorship of MasterCard Foundation, our team at TAC has designed the Africa Center Studio Women's Creative Exchange, a monthly workshop series and fund taking place between July and November 2025. In addition to the workshops, 3 participants with a business or business plan will be selected to receive an investment of $2,000 each after attending 3 out of 5 workshops and submitting a reflective prompt. For more details on what's required to receive the fund and to register for future workshops, please visit the Africa Center Studios webpage, which is linked in the chat. Everyone who attends at least 3 workshops, regardless of having a business or plan, will receive a digital certificate for their LinkedIn pages. MasterCard Foundation gave us this fund and said they want it to impact young Africans, allowing us to design it how we see fit. We decided we wanted to financially empower African women creatives through it. We created a format where our pre-selected workshop leaders choose one guest speaker for their workshop. We picked our workshop leaders by identifying organizations with proven expertise in supporting entrepreneurship within the creative economy for women in West Africa. Today's workshop leader is Christine. Christine is the managing director of Beaux Monde, a boutique strategic consultancy advancing ethical, high-impact growth across Africa's 100 billion plus cultural and creative economy. Under her leadership, Beaux Monde partners with global investors, diaspora leaders, and African creatives to co-create ventures that honor cultural heritage while delivering tangible returns, from scaling fashion enterprises in Nairobi to producing cross-continental film collaborations. With over 15 years of experience spanning government, academia, and creative industries, Christine brings unmatched insight and networks to every engagement. Her work prioritizes regulatory compliance, cultural integrity, and real-world outcomes, rejecting performative metrics in favor of meaningful and measurable community impact. When Christine suggested Sarah as a guest speaker, we knew she would be the perfect addition to the workshop series because of her wealth of experience. Sarah is the founder and creative of Tongoro, an award-winning and globally acclaimed Made in Africa label designed, sourced, and produced in Dakar, Senegal. Born in Paris from Senegalese and Central African parents, Sarah spent her childhood in Ivory Coast until 2001 before revolving to her natal city to follow her academic journey. Putting her skills in visual communication and marketing to work, in May 2016, Sarah launched Tongoro with the ambition to promote African craftsmanship and contribute to the development of garment production across Western Africa. Since then, the brand has gained international recognition with the likes of Beyonce, Naomi Campbell, Alicia Keys, and others, and was listed amongst Fast Company's World Top 50 Innovative Companies of 2020 list. In 2022, Tongoro became the first Made in Africa brand to land on luxury retailer Net-a-Porter. Her work in aspirational global African narrative and lifestyle sparked interest and led to collaborations with global luxury brands. As an innovator and leading voice in the global creative industry, Sarah leverages her network and impact to channel a positive and forward image of Africa in all of her endeavors. Now for a bit about TAC and our session today. The Africa Center is a think tank and cultural center based in New York City, where we focus on policy, business, and culture. We are a multidisciplinary institution focused primarily on narrative shifting surrounding the continent of Africa. So for us, we believe it's important what information gets to shape the world's understanding of the world and its people, but also who gets to communicate it. As a result, we work to center perspectives from and of the continent in conversations that pertain to them. As part of that work, we put on regular public programs such as this one today. At the end of today's session, From Fabric to Fortune, Building Profitable Fashion Brands in West Africa, there will be time for a brief Q&A, so please pop your questions in the chat throughout the workshop and we'll get to them at that time. Once again, on behalf of the Africa Center, thank you for joining us today and see you at our final workshop next month.
Thank you, Temi, and hello, everyone. On behalf of Beaux Monde, I'm delighted to welcome you to this wonderful session. At Beaux Monde, as Temi mentioned before, our work focuses on helping Africa's creative entrepreneurs move from passion to profit and from vision to venture. Fashion, in particular, is one of the continent's most powerful industries. It carries culture, identity, and immense economic potential. So, today we'll make the business behind creativity visible, the real strategies that turn design into a sustainable enterprise. It's my pleasure to introduce a creative visionary who embodies exactly that. The founder of one of Africa's most globally celebrated fashion houses, Ms. Sarah Diouf, founder of Tongoro. Sarah, over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for having me today. It's really a pleasure and an honor to be able to share my story and the brands. I think we live at a very crucial time and moment in history because the continent is going through so many shifts that essentially impact the creative industries, economies, and landscape at large. And I'm very fortunate and also very proud to be part of one of the leading voices to bring this change forward. A little bit about myself before we get into the nitty-gritty of the business of fashion when it comes to African brands. As I've been introduced, my name is Sarah Diouf. I am the founder of Tongoro, which is a 100% made in Africa label, based, sourced, and entirely produced in Dakar, Senegal. I've launched the brand in 2016 after years and years of observing what was going on the African fashion landscape, but at large. I saw that Africa was starting to garner interest from the global audience. And we started seeing African trends being featured more and more into media, on socials, and people also developing interest for the continent. Gathering all those datas, all this information, I was drawn to fashion, but I want to say by default because my background is not in fashion. I studied and graduated from business school. And when I decided to launch the brand, it was out of an observation. I realized that most of the brands that I was attracted to, that I admire, and it wasn't a lot at the time, but from the new voices that were starting to make a name for themselves, um, they were all meeting some type of issue with either meeting demands, meeting their audience, or being available in some type way, shape, or form. And I started thinking about what would an African fashion that could be available to most people would look like, how much that would cost, where we could find that brand. And so this is how the story and the idea of Tongoro started brewing. There's a thing I think in Western Africa, but also across all the continents, we have this relationship with our tailors. It's something that is anchored in our culture. For most people who live abroad, when they get back home, they go to their tailor and they get something made. And it's just part of like the rites of coming back home, and I have this thing and I get back to my second home with it. But one thing that I've noticed is that it wasn't structured. And most of the time, the issue that we would meet encounter locally is that those tailors would not be able to produce two exact same garment. So I started thinking about what structure would look like here at home in Senegal, and also the idea of like bringing this fashion line to life. And so slowly but surely, I started writing all the ideas that came to my mind. I started also budgeting and projecting and trying to find ways to make it happen because the most important thing for a brand is to be able to be accessible. And so it would have been a beautiful thing to create beautiful clothes and another to maybe set up some type of like training for the local tailors for them to be able to produce and respond to that global demand. But then the third factor and the most essential one was how I was how was I going to deliver all this packaged product to the world? And this is where social media came in. And to me, I think the digital is one of the best tools for any African creative today. It is a door to a global market. It is a door to um, creativity to be shown on an international stage. And when used wisely, I think we can really do wonders. And the e-commerce just imposed itself as an evidence for me. So we're going to go through all of the steps, all of the things, the momentum, all of the information that I think are important today while building a brand, and especially when doing so from the continent, because we're facing challenges and breaks that no other place in the world are often facing. And so I think it's adamant for anyone, any creative who actually wants to venture into the fashion industry, to know those first steps and have those first tools to get their message, their product, their vision into the world. So this is the very first campaign that we launched with Tongoro. It was called An African Dream, and it was just setting the stage for the message that I wanted to bring into the world. It was important for me that the brand embody the message of pride, of a strong identity, but at the same time, something that is very modern and global, because one thing that I've noticed over time and ever since I was born is that African are by nature very nomadic and global. Our great parents or our parents travel to build a better life for themselves, but they always keep this attached and this tie to home. People who were not born on the continent but come from African cultures at some point in their life venture and decide to go back home. And so the idea of like still remaining close to our roots is something that is intrinsically part of our culture. And I wanted the brand to vehicle all that. So this was the very first image that I put into the world. We had great responses, and I just kept building upon that because I wanted to create my own African dream. The first thing that I think is very important, so as I was saying, is having a vision for our own brand. Obviously, there's still space. The market is large, and there's a million ideas that can still see the light today and will see the light. But I think to really stand out in an over and crowded, saturated market today, competition is very hard. And so it was very important for me that my vision and what I was bringing to the table was different. Where Tongoro was differentiating itself is that I never budge on the fact that I wanted people to know that this is an African brand. From the name Tongoro, which is like a very Afrocentric in the sound. Tongoro actually means star in Sango, which is the native language of the Central African Republic where my mother is from. So it was important for me from the name to the visuals, to the model that I use, even to the styles, because sometimes I will just borrow a few references in the Senegalese culture and the Senegalese sartorial aesthetic. And so the vision was there, and I crafted into a message that could be understood, but also consumed by most, because if we want to bring something to the world, it needs to be understood by everyone. And then the last point that is very, very important to me, and which is actually the most exciting part of this entrepreneurial journey and this brand for me, is crafting the story. I came across a quote some time ago that said that your brand is a story unfolding at each customer point. So excuse me if my English is not perfect or if I'm missing some word, but I think that was the quote. And it stuck with me because for something that we're going to build and is going to last even after us, I mean, that's the goal and that's the dream. The story keeps unfolding. It never stops. So in every single element, whether it's the visual, whether it's the craftsmanship, whether it's the behind the scene, whether it's something that I'm putting on social, whether it's in in-person event, the story keeps happening and it keeps adding to all the elements that I started with my vision and my message. And so it was very important for me to build a brand that would be recognizable and that will just stand on its own amongst all the giants and amongst this very saturated market. The second part, which is not actually should not be the second, but very early I started thinking, and I think I said that in the introduction, I started thinking about how I would present the brand to the world, how I would bring it to people. And so the business model was something that I had to work on and be very precise and not budge on, because distribution is everything. Your brand doesn't leave it only if it only exists on social media or in people's mind or in beautiful pages of magazine or even just being worn by celebrity. At the end of the day, a brand is also a business, and a business needs to sell to be sustainable in the long run. My goal with Tongoro was also to change things on a local level, and I think my ambition have changed over time because I'm seeing things changing, and I think that we can do bigger things, but doing them better than models that we've been seeing and observing over the past decades in the West when it comes to the fashion industry. I really wanted this business to be, yes, a profitable business, but also something that has a social dimension, because I'm an African through and through. And I'm very fortunate to, I've been born in the family I was born to. I've been able to discover the world and have access to certain things, but I'm also very aware of the condition of so many people that live on the ground and on a day-to-day struggle to, meet the basic needs. So if I can, on like at my level, help to change that, meaning creating jobs, but jobs that are well paid, so that my tailors, the artisans, my assistant, or the people that just come through the doors of the company are proud, one, to work with us, but also feel fulfilled and have a sense of real impact on their lives, I think I would have won. And so this was embedded in the business model. It wasn't just not creating a brand to make something beautiful and profit for profit, but also have a social impact locally. And having those in mind helped me really carve and set my positioning when it comes to the pricing. I wanted Tongoro to be affordable, but still have or display the sense of like aspiration. So usually those brands that we call aspirational, but still mass market, quote unquote, are positioning on a medium, we call them like medium, medium, I think in English. Sorry, I'm losing my word. But this was the positioning I was going for, and it matches with the pricing. I think today an average piece from Tongoro is $250. So it is not an H&M, it is not a Zara. We're not doing fast fashion. We're producing at a sustainable pace. We have like a maximum number of units that we want to do every month, because over that, it's going to impact the quality. But at the same time, it allows the company to make a decent profit, pay all the people that are within the company well, and just grow and reinvest further into projects, into activation, into just more dreams that I have in mind or ideas. And I think the combination of all these elements really helped Tongoro position himself also through the eyes of the audience as this aspirational brand, because it was something very new to see an African brand that was authentically African, which message was about Africa, but that was playing, that is playing on the international field. But I think today I'm not the only one. There's so many brands that are doing the same, and this is where it gets interesting, because we're building not only an ecosystem, but slowly and surely, I think within the next 5 years, we're starting to see what we will really be able to call an industry. One aspect that also helped Tongoro and that is still helping the brand today is the marketing. I have a very specific marketing strategy. I don't necessarily do what everybody else is doing, because I'm aware that I'm in a particular position of having a voice that matters. I don't want to, for example, post on social media every day just because we have to sell. No. Another quote that actually I'm taking from one of my friends is, if you see me online, I either have a story to tell or a product to sell. But being every day with everything, we're so saturated today with information, image, visual, post, everything. So I want every single time that I put something into the world, whether it's a campaign, whether it's just a post or a story, it is received with the energy of we are here for it, and not, oh my God, this brand is just everywhere. And it's just, no. I think there is beauty in making itself rare, and if that makes sense. And so my strategy when it comes to marketing was just to tell a beautiful story, an impactful story every single time we release a campaign, but something that would stay in people's mind. This is why I'm taking so much time with the brand imagery, because every single image is a reflection and is a continuation of the story I'm telling, but is also part of the core identity of the brand. So it's not about doing more, but it's about doing less at a steady and sustainable pace in a way that marks people and stay with them forever. I also bet on different aspects that I think all African creative today can benefit from. We are living very, very, I wouldn't say strange time, but I'm part of this millennial generation where we've seen the internet come into our lives. Now we're seeing AI, which are beautiful things. I think technology, helped this brand be what it is today in so many ways. And using technology in ways that can actually further what I'm trying to do is what I wanted. So we started integrating, for example, 3D rendering in the way that we create, but it also helped our production in so many ways. So this started as a marketing strategy because I think 3D was getting momentum. Now it's been completely brushed off by AI because we can just generate almost real life images, or at least look alike. But 2020, 3D was really starting to take over in the retail space. And I immediately implemented it in the way that we were presenting the models. We gained a lot of traction. It was just so innovative because not everybody else was doing it. And now we actually transition with 3D into the way we produce. We don't have to, for example, create the pattern the old way. Everything is digitalized. It saves us time, cost, energy, so many things. And it just helped the business run even more smoothly. Well, one of the reasons also that marketing was so important, I think about the messaging. I wanted to push forward the image of like this aspirational image, because for so long, African goods have suffered from a bad reputation, a bad branding, and we just have to recognize it. We have sometimes incredible products, but we just don't know how to package it. And for it to be just to ignite interest and to get people to be excited about something, it needs to look good. We live in a society where image is everything, the way we present everything. And so I really wanted to change that. This is why I really focus on the branding, the imagery, and again, the marketing. And because we had this issue with the quality of our product and the perception that people had of it for so long, the way I was going to translate the Tongoro experience that not everybody could have online was by organizing pop-up events. So the first 3 years, I went to the cities where I knew I would find my audience, I would find my clientele, and organize pop-ups for them to be able to test the product, to try them on, to touch it. And because the pricing was meeting what they would be willing to spend, once they were convinced, I didn't have to do any more pop-ups, because now I would retain this clientele and they will come online and become like recurring clients, customers. This is just a slide for you to see a little bit of what the branding looks like at large. The very first image, as I was showing it, is an image of the very first campaign, An African Dream. The second image on the top is one of the items that we launched on Net-a-Porter in 2022. Some images from our website, some behind the scene and content that we produce and promote on social media, some of our visual collaboration with artists. Mrs. Carter wearing Tongoro and creating this visual on her own, or our latest couture collection. Everything comes together, even though they've been shot by different people, they've been shot at different times. It remains timeless and it remains cohesive because this is what a brand identity should be like. I think it really helps with bringing more opportunities, not only for the brand, but also for myself as an individual. And I think what usually people share this message of pride because one thing that we have to remember is that brand drive culture. When we look at the West and we look at all those big brands such as like Nike or Adidas or Apple or Google, those are the brands that drive the culture. When they innovate, there is a shift globally. When they launch new products, when they launch initiatives. And my dream is really to have as many super brands coming from Africa who bets on brand identity and all those elements that actually makes us stand out so that we can start really competing on the global market. Last but not least, storytelling is very, very important. I think that, again, it's embedded in the African culture. We are born storytellers. Unfortunately, a lot of our history, either personal or as a continent, hasn't been preserved or written. Obviously, we still have like some books and we have some history, but the Africa we know today is 60 years old. And 60 years when I think, for example, of a brand like Louis Vuitton, who's I think 187 years older than the Africa that we know post-independence, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't compute to me. So telling the story of the brand or like building the brand through storytelling and infusing African element is very, very important to me. Again, it really helped Tongoro stand out on the global market. And I think this is how we started getting recognition and interest from celebrities, which I've been very fortunate to work with. And some of them have tremendously helped the brand getting the recognition and the exposure that it has today. And transforming that exposure into sales, into development, into growth has been one of the most gratifying learning experience for me building this brand. And one of the key thing one of the key thing from branding, marketing, and the storytelling is also building something or creating something that is recognizable visually. I think the black and white is today part of Tongoro's DNA. People instantly see a silhouette and can recognize the brand. And I think this is a sign, or at least to me, it means that I've done my job and I've done what I was supposed to do when it comes to marketing, branding, storytelling. And for the backstory, the black and white has been inspired by the works of Malian photographer Malik Sidibé and Seydou Keita. All the photography that they created during the 60s, 50s, 60s in Africa was taken in black and white, I think just because at the time they couldn't afford a color. But there's this sense of like pride and joy that those cliches exude. And it always stuck with me. And I know that I was going to work in some type of way around that one day. And because I still wanted to stand out and build a brand that would be recognizable. Creating in black and white instantly give me this like specific visual factor. And this is something also to think about, how to stand out again in this very oversaturated market and be instantly recognizable. It really helps because then people come to a certain brand for certain things, a certain silhouette, a certain graphic, a certain element, and I think we've done that well. Some momentums of the brand. 2019, I mean, I've launched the brand in 2016. The very first big moment that we had, obviously, was 2018 when Mrs. Carter, Beyonce, wore the brand multiple times, and then we started building a relationship with her. One of the most beautiful moments for me, and I'm not like, obviously, Beyonce was a very, very beautiful moment, and it still is a beautiful moment. But having dressing Burna Boy, who's an African artist, who was performing in what I call my home country, in Ivory Coast in 2019, was very a full circle and beautiful moment because he's, I believe, one of those artists that kind of matches the vision that I have for the brand. He comes from Nigeria. He's very proud of his roots, but he operates and is recognized today on a global stage. And so that was a match made in heaven. And I was very, very, very proud of that moment. I think Tongoro really gained international brilliance and exposure and all of the things in it was between 2019 and 2020 when again we were featured in Beyonce's Black is King movie, the Disney featured. It really propelled the brand on the global stage and also within the fashion industry because we were featured amongst all those giant luxurious brands, and it really cemented the fact that we actually, as African creatives, African creators, we have a space, like we have the right to belong, amongst all those people, all those brands, sorry. In 2020, I decided to launch a documentary that I invite everybody to watch if you haven't already. It's 30 minutes. It's called Made in Africa, and it gathers all the information, all the learnings, but also the process and the journey of the brand from the beginning up until 2020. I try to do my best to really be authentic and real in the things that I was going through while building this brand, all the setbacks, but also all the beautiful opportunities that happened to me. One thing that I strongly believe in is collaboration. I've had many since launching this brand. One of the most beautiful ones was partnering with an African chain of hotels here in Dakar, Senegal, and we've redone most of the luxurious room with like a Tongoro design. And I think it just brings the brand into, it gives another dimension to the brand, but it also brings it into real life for people to still experience and have a different take of the story, but through different channels. And this was something great. In 2022, we launched on Net-a-Porter, which was a dear long dream of mine. Net-a-Porter at the time was one of the #1 top online luxury destination. They had never carried made in Africa, African labels before, and that was a first. It was also one of the most difficult experience that I had to, one of the most difficult projects that I had to do because in terms of production, what they required for one season, which is 6 months in fashion, was what we produce usually in 1 year. So I will spare you the details of going through all of that, but it was excruciating. I will never do that again, but I've learned so much with the wholesale business. And there's actually a lot of things that I've implemented in the business, but on our own ends. In 2023, the very first exhibition for modern Africa fashion opened at the V&A Museum in London. It has traveled ever since in New York, and it is now in Canada, in Montreal. Again, this was a very proud moment and something that I'm so grateful to be part of, because to think that I started this brand going sourcing fabrics on the local market and having one of our pieces exhibited in those monuments of history, and especially with my peers, with people who are doing the same thing, and being part of that moment was just comforting and validating, in a sense that I think we're going into the right direction. And we since then dressed much more people. I think the last big event, sorry, my screen is being hidden. Yeah, so after the V&A, the exhibition moved to the Brooklyn Museum. I went for the exhibit for the opening, and again, it was a beautiful moment because New York to me is one of the fashion capital, and to have everything go and be live there, the response was amazing. 2023, I think was a big year for the brand on so many levels, because we grew. I think we changed office and took like a bigger space. I hired more people. But in terms of momentums that the world saw, I've dressed Beyonce for the Renaissance tour, which was actually a momentum itself. And at the time, we were Tongoro was the only African brand featured over, I think, 200 costume. We dressed Beyonce and all the 30 dancers behind her. And this moment actually went viral because it was just not Tongoro doing something, it was Africa on the global stage. It was celebrated across all the continent. We get so many positive feedbacks and message from all the countries. And again, this reinforced me in a sense that the Made in Africa message that I've always carried with me and that I strongly believe will be at some point. I believe that at some point Africa will be one of the key places in the world for garment production, but the sustainable way, because everything we do is sustainable. But that moment itself really reinforced my belief that there is like a shared sentiment when it comes to the continent. I know sometimes we tend to globalize Africa. It's 54 countries, it's 2,000 tribes, there's so many cultures and everything, but we have a common destiny, and I try to embody that in my brand. It is not just for me. I'm not doing this brand for fame, recognition, or anything. I truly believe in what I do. I'm passionate about it. And I think that, we're on the right track. So if you can, I really would love for all of you who haven't seen it to go and watch the documentary. It will give you like a deeper sense of my message, my vision, but also I hope that you'll find some tools, direction, and answers to questions that you may have that maybe I haven't answered today. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sarah. That was fascinating. You've really taken us from inspiration to execution. So I'd love to unpack some of the themes that you mentioned for the benefit of everyone in the room. You mentioned at the very beginning, which was very interesting. I didn't realize this because everything you produce is so creative. I thought you must have come from a creative background. So it's really interesting to hear that you actually studied business and then kind of moved into the creative space. And you mentioned that there was this need you saw a gap in some of the brands or the producers in the space in terms of structure. So what was it about? I mean, the moving from what was it? What was that impetus to get you out of the classroom and into the atelier? And what did you think? What do you think will take? So let me put it this way: because the industry lacked structure, what did bringing structure actually look like for you day to day, so that we can kind of get an idea of what the gap you saw and how you saw yourself fixing that in your particular brand. What was that structure? What were the day-to-day tasks?
So when I first started the brand, um, I was, for example, going to one tailor. I would go to this tailor. He would have like multiple clients, and I will give him my order. It will give me a day where I would need to go and pick it up. Obviously, it was never met. But on top of that, let's say if I was starting with 5 different styles to be produced in 5 units each, they would never come exactly the same. There would always be a difference in terms of like execution. And that's
Yes.
because tailoring is something that is culturally passed on. It's a family skill sometimes that it passed on from generation to generation. It's not something that most of the tailors that we find here in the streets have gone to school to learn. They're not professionally trained. They're just like brilliant. Like they're very
Yes.
talented, but talent also needs structure. And so, for
Yes.
example, because I was not coming from a fashion background, I didn't know what a pattern was. And because of that, but I've always been a creative at heart. So I've always been surrounded by creatives. It's just that even being a creative, my mind function in systems. It needs to make sense. It needs to be efficient. And so I was just like, that doesn't work. How can I make this work? And I thought of my friend who was actually coming from a fashion school. And I said, hey, I want to do this thing. I've been doing it, like testing things out for the past year. What if I invite you to Dakar? Would you come and see what's not working? And she said, yes. So she came for 1 month during the summer. And she told me, oh, that's because they're not creating with pattern. This is why it never comes out the same. For each garment and for each size, you need to create a pattern. This way, you can even ship your pattern to Turkey or China or whatever. Once they have the pattern, you can have 100 that will be identical with to the millimeter. And I was like, okay. The issue that I've encountered is that I started this brand. Uh, I was not even 30 years old. I'm a woman in a country where tailoring is inherently masculine. To tell someone, oh, this is great, and you've done this your entire life, but I'm going to show you a new way to do it that is better and it's going to be more efficient. People don't believe what they cannot see. So
Yes.
it's a fight. It's, and it's a learning curve also because doing businesses in Africa, launching a project or a business in Africa is it's an experience itself. It's something that you cannot experience anywhere else. So even all through all those setbacks, I was still learning. I've learned how to adapt. Maybe I've lived in Africa most of my life, but I've studied abroad. And so maybe the way I think about efficiency is not the same as someone who's local. So I had to find a way to adapt myself to the way people understand how things work so that we can meet in the middle and actually create this efficient system. And so pattern making was definitely something that is something that is needed. Uh, Today, we only work with that. And if a tailor comes and I have to recruit someone new and he has never done pattern, he's never worked with a pattern, there is someone that can train him because you save so much time. We have shorter days because we don't have to cut everything one by one. It's in series and then it's organized.
Yes.
And I think it's just one part of the system because I think great things are built around system. System helps, things to function. So this was definitely something that I implemented and something that I recommend anyone who wants to build a business to have. I don't know if that answers the question.
Yes, yes, it does. Yes, it does. And actually, you went further, which was the other question. How do you see a potential brand doing this? And how does this help the ecosystem, which you have very well provided for? So let me switch over to the next thing, which I saw in everything that you did in every slide in your presentation, identity and aesthetic.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that in your first campaign, an African Dream, each carried such a strong message of pride and identity. How did you hold on to that unapologetically African aesthetic while speaking to global audiences? And you have a plethora of different, really global, influential people that have taken on your product, how did you manage to stay truly Tongoro while you're trying to dress these people so that you are still yourself, but they see themselves in your product?
So it's something I started the documentary with actually. I said everything comes in cycle. And I think that
Yes.
cycle has come to, it's time for Africa. We've
Yeah.
like dug into the inspiration of, at some point, I don't think if you remember, I think it was maybe 15 years ago, Asia was the new thing. And it
Yeah.
went, I wouldn't say quickly, but we've went around pretty quickly because Japan is the big influence and China is the big influence.
Yes.
And then, but we didn't explore India, for example, because I think at the time they were still building what today is like, you know, the India that we know.
Yes.
So the appeal went very quickly because people explored, the world explored everything that they wanted to explore and packaged. When it comes to Africa, because it is complex and people don't understand it, I think we are going to be there for a while. And I don't actually think that we're going to go anywhere from now on because we've been spotlighted. And to me, I think timing was definitely something that helped me in a sense where I've always been, I mean, everywhere I go, I'm myself. If I'm me you today, I'm me. I'm not going to change because of the room I'm in. And so it's the same. If I dress someone, you come to me for a very specific thing. The message that I put out there, I have this message needs to stay and it needs to be shown the way I intended to. Obviously, it's going to be a collaboration. If we're working, for example, on a custom design for somebody, there's so many specificity that comes in play, depending on the message, depending on the story they're telling, depending on where they're wearing it on stage or just to walk. It's going to be different. But because I've spent so much time building the Tongoro brand, it cannot be anything but Tongoro. And if you want something else, then it is not here. And I think that this is something that I also see with my generation. We're adamant about who we are, what we want. And I think it also comes from African pride. It's like, yes, when I go in your home, I bow and I kind of like respect your rules. But if you come into my house, then you have to do the same. And so standing proudly in the message and just keeping the message intact, it's something that is important to me. There's so many instances where I've been, for example, approached by brands to do collaboration or certain things. And it's just not, yes. And we have to also be real. Sometimes those brand comes and the check is amazing. And what they propose can really maybe change, you know, the course of, I don't know, one aspect of the business. But is it truly in line and in the equation with what I believe in? Or am I trying to travesty a part of my message just because now I have this opportunity? And that also relies on character. I cannot speak for everyone. It's important for me. For example, at some point, I'm going to be honest, I had a setback because one of the tailors that I started working with for a very long time started just not being as consistent and disciplined. And it's also one of the realities of working with people. And so I had to let them go because it was impacting the overall energy in the studio and just if I'm not well, the business is not I'm not gonna be able to pour pour the right energy into the business and my day-to-day activities. But it was a setback because this is someone that I've worked with for a long time. It was essential to the cutting process and all of that. And so finding someone who has the skill, but also I can work as efficiently with, was not a guarantee. And so for a few months, because I'm someone who works in system, I was quite organized. So we had inventory and things planned so that he's leaving wouldn't impact the life of the business itself. But for 6 months, I was like, okay, I am not producing the way I'm supposed to produce. I don't want the business to die because one thing here is that you launch a business, your business dies. It's not like in France or maybe in other countries where the government is gonna give your employees some type of salary for the time that they paid. It's not organized like that. So when it dies, it dies. There's no plan B. And so for me to think ahead, I was like, okay, should I think of a different ways to do Tongoro? Would people still buy it if it's not made in Africa? And at some point I was just like, no, Sarah, you know what? You need to stick to, there's no plan B. You need to stick to the plan A. It's going to take time, even if you have to train someone else for X amount of months, but I need to stay the course because the goal is to show that it is possible for us to create actually this African dream, whether it looks like a fashion brand or a fashion studio or I don't know, whatever. But I just needed to stay the course, and I'm so grateful actually that I didn't just, give up and took the Turkey roads or the China road just because the brand needed to present product at all times. So yeah, this is also one of the realities that we can face, but I think it's about decide. I think, and I always, because I shared, we have a little club with a few founders from African descent that don't necessarily also do the Made in Africa, but we're doing outstanding numbers. And so when we share, sometimes in joke, it's like, oh, if I hadn't taken the Made in Africa roads, like where would I be in terms, for example, in revenue? But I'm thinking 50 years from now, if I keep doing what I'm doing, it will be beautiful. I can see it, and I think that something that I see has to happen. So yeah.
So you mentioned early on that you identified where your market is, and I think you were struggling on the group of people that you are targeting, I think, which is the middle class, and that
Yeah.
your pricing is and that your pricing is at that 250 euro space. But a question in advocating for the emerging designer, they find it very difficult to price their products. So how do you learn to price with confidence and decide this is who I'm targeting, and this is where that price is? And how did you go about that?
I think that one element, and actually it was the very final slide on my presentation, there are four key things that we really need to think about when we're launching a brand, because a brand doesn't exist without a product, and the pricing doesn't exist without the margins. We have to calculate how much things cost to be able to price correctly. If I want to position myself as a mid-range brand and sell, let's say, a $300 product, how much that product cost? And is it sustainable for me to sell it at 300, or should I sell it like a bit more at a higher price point? And so those calculations are essentials, because besides the beautiful things that pertains to the branding, the imagery, it all comes down to the numbers. You cannot shoot a beautiful campaign if the product itself cannot sell. And if the product cannot sell, there's something that needs to be rethought when it comes to like the costs. So margins, how much does it cost me to buy 4 meters of fabric if I need 4 meters of fabric for my piece? In terms of the accessories, as far as like the brand labels, fabrication labels, sizing labels. When I buy this in bulk, if I buy 1,000, how much per unit does that cost me? Because this goes into the cost of one piece. And then finally, the producing itself, the manufacturing, how much does it cost for someone to actually put the piece together? And once I have all this breakdown and I can sum it up, I have actually the cost of my product. My product costs, let's say, I don't know, $50 to make. Now, $50. If I decide to sell this product $1,000, it means that I'm gonna spend maybe 2,000 in imagery so that it looks like luxurious for people to have the appeal of buying a $1,000 product. But if I say, hey, it cost me 50 to make, and I just want to do like 2x pricing. So I'm selling at 100, then maybe you spend a little less on imagery, maybe 500, and then that reduces your cost, but then you'll have to produce more if you want to break even. So again, that depends also on the target. How much do I need to sell every month to break even and to make ends meet? How much, what's the minimum just to cover all my costs? And then what is the number of units I need to sell to make a profit? So all of this comes down to calculating, the operational cost. Also, because if you're an emerging designer and you do not have an office, as most of us when we start, so you don't have the operational cost of an office, and you don't have bills. The only thing that you pay really is the manufacturing and the material. But then as you grow, sometimes you need to recalibrate your pricing. When I first launched Tongoro, I think the the lowest price point was 75. I think that was maybe for a top or for a pant. And then over time, we had to just set the price point like a little bit higher. Then it was 150 for a few years, and now it's 250. And I don't think I want to go higher than that for a studio line, which is the everyday. I mean, not every day, but because we're doing occasional wear, but for the regular items. And lately, because I had a growing demand of made to order and customs, I launched a line that is called couture, which is semi-couture. People send their measurements and we produce items that they see that are available on the website. And again, it's all about finding the balance and playing with the numbers to figure out a model that works for you, works for your business, and to make sure that the most important thing is really to break even, not to operate at deficit.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I think that is, even here in Kenya, a lot of designers have a lot of trouble because, as you mentioned at the very top, tailors have a history with Africans. We work with them on a daily basis. Every time you want to go to a wedding, you go to a tailor first and they make something for you. But that might be a little bit different if you want now to build a brand, build a company, and now you're not doing made to order, you're doing this at a larger scale, but you still have to identify your target audience and what their threshold and what they can be able to manage while covering your costs. And
Absolutely.
I think it's your story is unique because of the folks that you have dealt with, and we're now kind of moving into marketing and storytelling. Your collaborators and some of the recognitions that you have. I'm assuming that a majority of your clients are international, because your name is out there. But how do you but you mentioned something about you don't believe in being on social media without a story to tell or a product to sell. So you've been very it's been wonderful to see that when you do have a story, it's a great story based on your
Exactly.
collaborations and recognitions. How do you maintain that discipline? Because I'm pretty sure it doesn't happen every day. How do you maintain that discipline, especially in this day of, if you're not on social, you don't exist? Considering you're based in Africa and you want to be based in Africa, how do you manage that? How
So
does one manage that?
obviously, we are on social media. We have a page. We're very
Yeah.
active. But I was referring to the pace at which people communicate. I always take myself as like an example when it comes to a customer, because I myself, I love buying online. I do most of my shopping online. Obviously, in Africa, the retail space, in Senegal, retail is not as developed as in the West. So there's a lot of things that we still buy abroad and, have and we get them here. But when I think of a store online that I really like and the communication, for example, I don't need to get a newsletter every day because I'm an active person. So getting a newsletter, I know the product, I go on the site, I really love the brand. So being floated with information I don't think that's the way to retain, because if anything, it's gonna bore me, and then I'm just gonna subscribe to the newsletter.
Yeah.
So to me, it was just adopting a communication style that will match the the ideal customer that I want. Is someone that is busy, who has a life, but who also like to dress, who's very proud if they're from African descent, because obviously we have different types of customer. But if it's someone who's from the Afro community, they love to support, because once they find the style that match their something that match their liking, they become like returning customers. And also it's someone who keeps the brand at someone who doesn't forget about the brand. It's always here. So I don't necessarily need to be in their inbox every day. If we have something nice that I think they will benefit from, as far as like we only do, it's not even a sale, but it will be like 2 discount code that we do a year. And when that happen, I know, because it's an event. If we discount all the year, then why would you discount your work, something that you like? There's so many how can I say that? There's so many things that I think we need to be careful because um, we try to present Africa under a new light. I don't think, for example, we should discount our pieces and do sales the way the West is doing. Let's do it our way. You have an artisan, someone who's doing something by hand, and when you look at the way those couture houses in Europe market the work of what they call les petites mains in French, the little hands. I'm thinking about the Chanel Atelier or the Hermes Atelier. They value the end work. They value craftsmanship. And we should value craftsmanship. So discounting, no, I don't want to do that. I will give you the the opportunity maybe to buy a lower cost, a lower price twice a year, but then the communication will also be paired to that. Then if we have something that I really want my audience to pay attention to, as in recently in August, the US, which is, we represent today 60% of our sales, they announced that they will end the tariff was implemented, and for so long, Senegal, all the goods that we were shipping in the States were not taxed at the import. And now there's a minimum import fee. So when I write an email, and which is like a long email to convince somewhere my clientele not to give up on us, because they will have maybe to pay $30 to $50 on each piece on top of the price that they already pay, I know they will be paying attention because they haven't received like a ton of emails from us. When I post a new campaign on social media, it becomes an event, because once the event is done and I retract, then people are anticipating what's going to come next. And because we took our time to craft the message, to craft the imagery, to craft the video, to craft everything that we're putting out there, it becomes even more so special. And I'm going to tell you, I actually learned a lot observing Mrs. Carter in her communication. Look at how she presents her artistry. Every single time she presents something, it is celebrated because it's unique, and we're here to enjoy it while it's live, while it's here. And then she retracts, and she doesn't have to be out there all the time in her face, because there is I think there's beauty in something that is rare again. And so I really try to adopt that in my communication. I think it works well with the brand. And for people who, because there's a discourse in marketing within the marketing community about, it's social media. We have to be out there. We have to be people, otherwise people forget about you. I don't think so. I do not think so. I think less is more. And I think that if you do something worth remembering, then you don't have to be in people's face every day. So yeah, that's just something that I've adapted to our communication, and I really stick to it. I believe in it.
It's amazing how your journey shows that being rooted in Africa doesn't limit your reach. It really most of the time it amplifies it. So thank you so much for being open, Sarah.
Thank you.
I just want us to kind of move into the fireside reflection time. Before we wrap up, I'd love to reflect a little on the personal journey behind the brand. You've achieved so much in under a decade, but I know it hasn't been easy. So let's talk about the lessons learned behind the success. So, what's one challenge that taught you the most about building sustainably?
I think again, it's the fact that there was no plan B in so many aspects of the business. Um, I will find someone great to start working with, a great tailor, and then suddenly it will vanish. How do you how do you organize when you have, for example, orders pending? Um, the lack of resources and also having to figuring out as I build. There's no model that exists because as much as yes, fashion businesses exist, they exist everywhere, but a fashion businesses, for example, that have achieved what I'm trying to achieve in Africa, but also while operating on the global stage, I haven't seen one. So there's a lot of firsts. And um, I think that the biggest lesson that I've learned is that I don't always have to Google and try to mimic what has already been done because maybe I'm built to build the template for what is going to come even after me. And so that gives me great freedom. I think for the first 3 years of the business, it was giving me anxiety because it's just like, okay, actually, okay, the brand is visible, people see, but I'm not sure that the next move is the right one, but I'm gonna do it anyway. Okay, and then you do the next move and you always doubt yourself because nothing is sure, nothing is certain. But once I understood that actually, I really understood and really accepted that the difference and the African message and being rooted in Africa and also the environment was always going to work in my favor. We talk about sustainability, for example. When people, at some point, sustainability was a trend and a word that was used very loosely everywhere. And I was like, I don't think African brands should worry so much about sustainability. We've been sustainable from the beginning. We do not overproduce because we do not have the capacity. People recycle fabric. There's a technique that I'm exploring right now, which is called Njahas here in Senegal. And it's where in a studio, for example, you've cut different fabrics and all the remaining fabrics are used to create a new one, a patchwork, for example. And then that creates new garment. We've been sustainable forever. And when the world wants to impose certain things on us, I think when it comes to sustainability, my thinking was, but why do you want me to think about fabric waste when actually the sustainable thing for me is for my tailors to be able to eat and have a roof over their head. This is what makes my business sustainable. And your definition of sustainability is not necessarily working for me because we're not operating in the same environment. And so understanding that again, I took the example of the Google because it's just when we don't find something or where something doesn't look like, we tend to just research and see, oh, this person is doing that, that works. Okay, I'm going to apply it to myself. No, we have a unique opportunity to create templates because everything we do from now on is a first. And this was my biggest lesson while building this business and still to this day. For example, if I were to give somebody else an advice today, you want to build your business, if you have the opportunity to not use your own money to build that business, go for it. Because there's plethora of resources of people who are willing to invest in business in Africa and in fashion business, because we know that this is an industry that's just going to grow and be bigger and bigger. It's not worth all the headaches and everything necessarily when we start. Obviously, not everybody has access to all of that, but that will be one of my first advice. It's just take the resources that are at your disposition to build that. it will give you the freedom to really be creative, to hire the people that you really need to structure the business properly, and you will put all your chances, all the chances on your side. So yeah, I think those are like the two main lessons that I take with me.
So I just have two more questions. We don't have a lot of time left, but I think these two would be really, really important. You've managed to stay, and I think you've kind of touched on it already, but you've managed to stay based in Dakar while operating globally. But this is a question as to you personally. What has that meant for you personally and professionally as the founder of Tongoro?
So that's actually a great and interesting question. I think many people couldn't understand when I decided, for example, just to come back home after I finished my studies, because even though I still saw that things were changing when it comes like perception of Africa and that we were slowly building momentum in the way we are received and perceived in the world. Um, I was just obsessed with the idea of building this brand. And to me also, in terms of like the quality of life, I know there's so many things that are not working, kind of, but there's also there's a to me it's where I belong. There's a sense of peace, and I cannot just come here and just build for 2 months and just go leave my like it's again it's I think it pertains to who I am as a person and what I believe in. Um, I still do all the nitty-gritty thing. I go to the market, I'm dressed in my boo-boo, and I bargain and all that because it's what keeps me excited, just as in the beginning. But I remain in Dakar because this is where everything starts from for me. And I want people to one day be able to come here and be like, hey, we're going to Tongoro headquarters, for example, the same way we're going to Nike headquarters when we go to Portland, or uh, why would I give another place the benefit that actually my home country can, have? And I think this is part of like bringing, like we bring Africa to the world, but then we bring the world to us. You have to come where we are. So, yeah.
So the last question was about advice to a young up and coming creative, but I think the announcement that you have in terms of a mentorship opportunity will answer that. So let me give you the opportunity to share this wonderful announcement, and yeah, please go ahead. Please go ahead.
So I'm again, one thing that I reflect a lot is the fact that I didn't have guidance when I started this business, and I've been able to do really amazing things and really the African dream that I had in mind. I'm so, so grateful because I think that I'm living it today, and I'm really working hard to maintain that. But I think that the goal is not to be the only one. The goal is really for us to build a community, to build an industry so that this can be sustainable in the long run. And in partnership with everyone here today, we decided that, I would love to mentor one person for the next 6 months, starting January, with the beginning of their entrepreneurial journey. That would consist in 1 to 2 monthly check-in to see how they build their business, how they structure their business plan, if it's just at that stage, or their operations, and any type of help that I can give so that they can have like a steady foundation to really take it to the next level. Again, I've been very fortunate, and I think I really believe in giving back. And that's the way I can so far. So I hope that anyone watching is excited. We will be reviewing, I think, through a selection process while you guys will be sending either your business plan or a description of the business that you have in mind. And Christine, myself, and the Africa Center team member will be able to choose one lucky winner. And also, I think it will be it will be a win-win for everyone, because I think we're all here, we're all sharing the same sentiment when it comes to give back and create opportunities for the younger generation. And so, yes, that's it.
Yeah. It's such a wonderful initiative, Sarah. Thank you for not just inspiring, but also creating pathways for others to grow. As we close, I want to extend our sincere thanks to the Africa Center Studio for convening this series, to Sarah for sharing her journey so generously, and to everyone who joined us this evening. What we've heard today is a powerful reminder. Creativity is the seed, but structure is the soil. When both thrive, Africa's fashion story grows. Thank you all for being part of this conversation, and we look forward to seeing you at the next Women's Creative Exchange session. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.